everyone, it is Delancey and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking authors. Now, as if my TBR wasn't long enough, today I wanted to talk about the top 10 authors that I have recently been keeping an eye on. They've kind of been on my radar. These are authors that I've never read from before, but because of either a very popular book or series that they've written, because a booktube hero of mine is really recommending their work, or just because of the aura around this author, I have been really drawn to them and am interested in picking up one of their books. So I've split this video up into three sections, three categories of genres. The first genre will be fantasy authors, both YA and adult. The second category will be YA contemporary, and then I will wrap it up with adult romance. So without further ado, I'm just gonna get straight on into it. So the first fantasy author on my list is Robert Jordan. This is the famous author behind the Wheel of Time series. Now, I first heard about the Wheel of Time through Daniel Green, another YouTuber here in the booktube space, and I am a massive Daniel Green groupie. I'm part of the cult. I'm a big fan of his, and listening to him talk about the Wheel of Time and get so excited about the series, it really has inspired me and makes me want to pick up the series even though I don't know anything about it. Plus, all that aside, I feel like the Wheel of Time is such an important series in the fantasy genre, and I'm really working on my critical thinking skills and becoming a more critical reader, especially in the fantasy genre, so I can talk more eloquently about these kinds of books. And I feel like if I take the time to read The Wheel of Time, you know, I think that could benefit me a lot as a critical reader. Now, like I said, I don't know anything about this series, which is surprising that I have managed to go this long without knowing anything about it. Synopsis for the first book is a little cryptic too, and not very helpful, at least over on Goodreads, so I'll read it for you. The wheel of time turns and ages come and go, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. In the third age, an age of prophecy, the world and time themselves hang in the balance. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. Yeah, I have no idea what that means, but I trust Daniel and I trust the whole entire fantasy community that really, I mean, a lot of people consider this series very beloved, so I trust everybody and I'm willing to go in blind. I think it might actually be better that way, so hopefully Robert Jordan will be on my radar very soon. The next author on my list is N.K. Jemisin. This is an author who has also been recommended to me via a really popular booktuber, and that is Reagan over on the Peruse Project. Now, N.K. Jemisin has written the 5th season. I don't know what this series is called, but I'm just gonna call it the 5th season series. And Reagan is a really big fan of those books. She talks about them all the time. I feel like she's probably reread them at this point, and I really trust Reagan. I feel like we have a lot of the same fantasy tastes. Now, once again, I don't know a whole lot about the 5th season, but from what I've gathered from Reagan, as well as over on Goodreads and just other kind of book reviews, I think this is a story of man versus nature. Maybe some like politics are involved. I think it's multi-perspective in like a post-apocalyptic kind of setting, and I think at least one of the perspectives we are following a mother who is trying to find her long-lost daughter. So it sounds really interesting. So N.K. Jemisin is definitely on my list. Next up is an author that I am ashamed to admit is on this list that I haven't read from yet, and that is Maggie Stiefvater, the author of The Raven Cycle. I know The Raven Cycle is such a classic in the YA booktube community. It's a shocker that I haven't read these books yet. Once again, I don't know a whole lot, which I think is going to be a trend here in this video, but I do know that we are following a girl named Blue, and I think her mom is clairvoyant, and Blue has been told from a young age that no matter what she does, she will be the cause of her true love's death. So she's just going about her life with that baggage on her, and she comes into contact with this band of boys known as the Raven Boys, and I think there's like a lost family trope going on, and it's just a beloved series. I think Lala from Books with Lala really likes it, as well as a slew of other people. I'll get to it eventually, hopefully. Next on my list is another gaping hole in my YA booktube repertoire, and that is Cassandra Clare. Now, I just didn't know about the Shadowhunters books until way late in the game, and I wish as like a middle schooler or a young teenager I had heard about them and jumped on the bandwagon so I could enjoy the books as they came out. but I really just totally missed the boat on this one, and I have heard time and time again from all sorts of people from all walks of life that the Shadowhunter series is not only wonderful, but has been truly like life-changing for some people. And apparently, I think it's the Infernal Devices, that kind of spin-off series from the main story, is wonderful. Apparently Clockwork Princess is amazing, and I would love to read it, but I feel like I need to start from the very beginning and work my way up, which is a little intimidating. But hearing just everybody's experience with the Shadowhunters, and because Cassandra Clare is such an integral author within the YA booktube community, I cannot help but admit that I still think about dabbling in her books, as intimidating as the long list of Shadowhunters books is. Who knows, maybe in the future I can start like a series here on the channel where like noob reads Shadowhunters books, I don't know, but it is a thought, and I am keeping Cassandra Clare on my list. And the final fantasy author on my list is actually a debut author. He only has one book out thus far, and it came out, I believe, in 2019, so very recently. But when his book came out, it was received with so much praise, and I've heard a lot of people say that this author has just set a whole new bar for debut fantasy authors, especially in the adult fantasy category, and that is Evan Winter, who just came out with The Rage of Dragons. Now, from what I've gathered from the Goodreads synopsis, we are following a young man named Tao, and he lives in a very brutal society. Everyone is bred and raised to eventually join the army and become a fighter, and Tao thinks he's going to cheat the system a little bit. He is going to enter the army, but he's going to injure himself pretty early on in the game so that he is excused from his military duties and he can go on to live a peaceful life with his family. But things go sideways, his whole family is murdered or something happens to them, and so Tao's whole perspective shifts and he moves from being kind of like a pacifist to being one out for revenge, and he has plans that he is going to become the best swordsman around. He is going to become a killing machine, and he is going to take revenge on the 3 people that betrayed him. It's marketed as like a cross between Game of Thrones and The Gladiator, so I'm very interested. But the main reason that I want to read from Evan Winter is because I am so tired of hearing about all of these wonderful authors and their works after the fact, in hindsight, or when all of their books become backlisted. And I want to get in on the ground floor of a fandom, and I just think that Evan Winter and The Rage of Dragons has potential to be really wonderful, so he's definitely on my radar. Okay, so now moving into the YA contemporary category, the first author I'm going to mention I feel really bad about, but that is Maureen Gu. Now, I have checked out The Way You Make Me Feel, Somewhere Only We Know, and Since You Asked literally 5 times from the library, and all 5 times I did not read them and returned them. It was just the timing was never right, but I have had full intentions of reading her work, so she continues to sit at the back of my mind. I have heard that her books are so much fun, perfect for the spring or the summertime, just really fluffy, lighthearted YA contemporaries and romances, and I think maybe 1, maybe 2 of her books have K-pop elements to them, so they just sound really fun, but it just hasn't worked out, so we'll get there eventually. And then the second author in this category is a similar situation, and that is Maureen Johnson. And I don't have a whole lot to say about this author, just that I have heard that the Truly Devious books are absolutely wonderful. It is a very thrilling YA mystery story that takes place at a very prestigious boarding school, and it has a bunch of tropes that I just absolutely love, so it has me written all over it, and I feel like I would absolutely enjoy these books. But once again, I have checked out Truly Devious 3 times from my library and returned it without having read it all 3 times. So waiting on the timing to work out for the planets to align just right, and hopefully I will read Truly Devious very soon. And for my last 3 books, I will now be moving into the adult romance category, which I never thought I would hear myself say. If you've been watching my videos from the beginning, you know that I found out about the new adult and adult romance genres kind of by accident. I really wasn't sure if it was for me, but over the past few months, I have just gotten really into these books, and I started watching Chandler Ainsley, who is mostly known for being a romance kind of booktuber, and I absolutely love her. She is my go-to girl for all of my recommendations, so I have really gotten into the genre lately, and so there are a lot of authors that I have been keeping an eye on. So the first author I'm going to mention is Penelope Douglas. Now, this is a favorite of Chandler's. She absolutely loves Penelope's work. Punk 57, I think, is the name of the book that Chandler really loves. It's like one of her all-time favorites. And Hearing Chandler talk about it, it makes me really want to read Penelope Douglas's books. Like, all of them sound interesting. That being said, I am still pretty soft and green to the adult romance category. So I feel like if I'm gonna read Penelope Douglas, I know she writes some really dark romances. She also has some taboo elements in her books, whether it's a big age gap or just her characters are into really sketchy pastimes. So I think if I'm gonna read Penelope Douglas, I'm gonna have to do it strategically and kind of work my way up to books like Credence. But I'm very interested and I hope to read from Penelope Douglas very soon. Next up on my list is Sally Thorne. Now, I have heard Chandler mention Sally Thorne. I don't know if she's like a huge fan of her, but I'm mostly drawn to Sally Thorne because of The Hating Game, which is a romance book that came out not too long ago, and I feel like it just made a huge splash in the booktube community. And when I listen to romance booktubers talk, I hear them reference The Hating Game a lot. A lot of the times they'll say things like, you know, if you like The Hating Game, then you will like this, or you will hate that. And so it just seems like a pretty important book to read, especially if you are someone who's interested in the enemies to lovers trope, which I'm interested in. Plus, I think Sally Thorne's second book, I can't remember the name right now, but there is a lot of mixed reviews about it. Some people loved it, some people hate it, and for me, whenever I see that there are very polarizing views on a book, it really draws me in, and I'm just so curious to see where I fall on the spectrum. So that is why Sally Thorne is on my list. And the final author I'm going to talk about today is technically like a fantasy author, but I put her in the romance category, and you'll see why when I say her name. And that is Sarah J. Maas. Now, whether it is Read with Cindy or the entire just book Twitter community, I am constantly seeing jokes and memes and just clever tweets about Sarah J. Maas's work, and I honestly just want to read her stuff because I want to get in on the fun and I want to understand the memes. I think if I read the Court of Thorns and Roses, that whole series, I think that will be the more wild ride, but I have a lot of really good friends here in the booktube community that absolutely love the Throne of Glass series as well. So I'm not sure which way I'll go, but she's definitely on my list because, once again, I just feel like she is such a big author in the booktube community, and I just want to be able to understand people's references and in on the fun because that's what this community is all about. Alright, you guys, that is going to do it for me. If you have read any of the authors that I mentioned today, comment down below and let me know which books of theirs you read, your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings. Are there any authors that I should prioritize over others, or are there some authors that I mentioned today that you think I should just skip and move on from? I would love to know your opinions and thoughts. Otherwise, that is going to do it for me, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye!